Look closely at any major ancient civilization, and you will find a clear trail leading backward. The Romans, for example, clearly inherited their architecture and customs from earlier groups, like the Etruscans, who painted these tomb walls. The Egyptians grew out of the Nakata farming communities along the Nile, leaving behind a clear evolutionary chain of early pottery and artifacts leading right up to the pharaohs. The people who built the very first cities and organized governments break that chain completely. Their language fits on no known branch, and their writing system arrives in southern Iraq almost fully formed, already being used for complex accounting without any early developmental phase of cave painting or picture writing. How a society invents the basic systems of human civilization while leaving zero genetic or cultural origin trail is an anomaly. Scholars eventually gave this missing timeline a name: the Sumerian problem. The builders of those first cities left records about where their knowledge came from. According to their own texts, the gifts of mathematics, astronomy, and law were brought to them by beings from a distant high country. They stated directly that they received these systems at Eridu, their first city, and that the architects of these advancements had traveled from somewhere far beyond the Mesopotamian valley. For over a century, the archaeologists excavating these sites treated those accounts as fancy religious storytelling. The references to mountains were cataloged as poetic myth. The accepted academic consensus held that the Sumerians must have grown straight out of the obeyed farming groups who already lived in the local river plains. The missing parent culture was simply buried under thousands of years of mud. The leading minds of modern science assumed the inventors of writing were lying about their own history. The case was treated as closed, without physical proof to back it up. The first crack in that consensus came in 2011, when a genetic research team at the University of Pavia studied a population in southern Iraq known as the Marsh Arabs. They live in the exact same wetlands, build matching reed houses, and fish from identical channels using traditions passed down continuously for thousands of years. The genetic testing revealed a distinct split. While the maternal DNA showed a typical Middle Eastern mix, nearly 3/4 of the men carried a Y chromosome family line whose inner range centered far to the north and east. The main paternal line of the people closest to the Sumerians did not begin where the Sumerians ended up. It moved in from the outside. Modern samples could raise the question, but answering it required ancient DNA, and extracting a readable map from human bone baked in the hot, dry climate of southern Mesopotamia was technically impossible at the time. That barrier finally fell in August of 2022. A team at Harvard published the very first pre-pottery Neolithic Mesopotamian gene maps recovered from human remains high up in Shanidar Cave. The established theory dictated that early Mesopotamian farmers should group genetically with their direct ancestors to the west, the Levantine groups who were the closest known source of early agriculture. This chart plots the genetic results. Instead of sitting with Levantine or Anatolian farmers, the Shanidar samples land in a blended spot, drawing heavily from the Iranian Zagros Mountains. When we overlay a timeline, this eastern ancestry arrives precisely as local farming villages form. The foundational culture of Mesopotamia was a fresh blend of older sources. The people who built the earliest temples had absorbed a massive genetic influx from the eastern mountains only a few generations prior. Read through the lens of that genome, the surviving clay tablets and inscribed stone pillars look entirely different. The precious materials mentioned in their creation poetry, carnelian, copper, tin, and lapis lazuli, are the exact physical resources that flow strictly out of the eastern highlands. The Sumerian texts continuously link their gods and their earliest ruling families to a distant high country on the eastern edge of the world. They were writing down a literal geographic origin point. The beings coming down from the mountains bringing the gifts of civilization were the recorded memory of their own ancestors. For 2 centuries, we labeled these accounts as mythology because we lacked the capacity to verify them. The genetic maps finally provided the tools to read those texts as historical memory. The Sumerians prove that no human society ever rises in total isolation. The birthplace of cities and written law was an active intersection where moving groups met, traded, and folded into one another. That Iranian Zagros ancestry didn't stop in southern Iraq. It flowed continuously across the Fertile Crescent, embedding itself in the Babylonians, the Persians, and even early European populations. The leaps in agricultural planning and organized society emerged because distinct human networks collided and merged into something none of them could have built alone. While the origins of their unique language are still unknown, the textbook assumption of a single local root is finished. We assumed the ancients were making up fairy tales, but they knew exactly who they were the entire time.